Okay, let's jump right in. We're going to start today with a really simple, down-to-earth question from a farmer. But what's wild is that the answer to this question, well, it ends up revealing the hidden logic of our entire global food system. Seriously. So here's the plan. We'll kick things off with that nitrogen question, then see how it could replace the classic fertilizer bag. From there, we'll zoom way out to the planetary puzzle, look at these two totally different worlds of farming, stumble upon a pretty cool accidental solution, and then, finally, wrap it all up with this amazing concept called Øko-logik. All right, section 1. Let's get our hands dirty, so to speak. It all kicks off with a super practical question from a farmer who's just trying to figure out the best way to take care of their land. So here it is. The farmer's asking, for enriching my soil, what's the best bed? Peas, chickpeas, or soy? You know, all three of these are legumes. They're famous for their ability to grab nitrogen right out of the air and lock it into the soil. But the key question is, which one leaves the best gift for the next crop that's going to be planted there? And here's where it gets really interesting. If you look at the numbers, you think soybeans are the winner, right? They fix a ton of nitrogen. But they're kind of greedy. They use most of it for themselves. The real hero for the soil, it turns out, is the good old pea. It leaves behind a whopping 60 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare for whatever comes next. That's a huge deal.
Okay, so that leads us to the next big question. 60 kilograms of natural nitrogen. Is that a lot? I mean, can that little pea really go head-to-head with the big bags of industrial fertilizer that modern farming absolutely depends on?
Well, have a look at this. That 60 kilos from the pea residue? It's a fantastic start. For a crop like wheat or maize, it's not everything they need, but it covers a pretty hefty chunk of it. Think of it as a huge down payment on the crop's nitrogen budget. But it's not the whole story. And this is where the magic really happens. This is where the whole system clicks into place. If you take that nitrogen from the peas and you add in livestock manure, what they call Jill in Denmark, boom, you've got more than enough nitrogen for a healthy crop of wheat. You've just created a self-sufficient system with zero synthetic inputs. That's the dream, right? Now, that closed-loop system, it works beautifully on a single farm. It's elegant, it's sustainable, but can it scale? Can this simple logic actually feed, 10 billion of us? This is where we zoom out and hit the real planetary puzzle. Just look at that number, 120 million tons. That is how much synthetic nitrogen fertilizer we as a planet produce every single year using the Haber-Bosch process. Trying to replace that with just peas and manure, that's a totally different ballgame. So you see, the roadblock here isn't a lack of biological know-how. We know how to do it. The real problem, the thing that's holding us back, is the system itself. We're talking about our supply chains, our economic models, the politics of it all, the entire political economy of agriculture. It really boils down to a geography problem, a spatial problem. We've completely broken the natural cycle. We grow the animal feed, say soybeans in South America, and then we ship those nutrients thousands of miles away to feed animals in a feedlot in, say, Texas. It's a one-way street for nutrients that ends up in a waste lagoon. We've put this massive distance between our crops and our livestock, and the only thing that can bridge that gap is fossil fuels and industrial fertilizer. And this huge disconnect, this spatial problem, has basically created two parallel universes of farming. Two completely different worlds running on totally different rules. On one side, you've got the industrial model. It's all about specialization, right? You grow one thing here, raise one thing there. It's a system of extraction that depends on synthetic inputs to keep it going. But on the other side, you have the biological model. And this one is all about integration, about cycling those nutrients locally using natural inputs. Two completely different philosophies. And this isn't just some abstract theory. You can see it clear as day. Look at the difference between a massive concentrated feedlot in Texas versus a green, lush pasture in Denmark. One imports its feed from halfway across the world and creates a huge waste problem. The other is a living, breathing ecosystem that actually builds up the soil. It's night and day. And that's why this is so important. We spend so much energy arguing about beef versus soy. Is the cow the problem or is the plant the problem? But we're missing the point. The real villain here isn't the food itself. It's the distance. It's the thousands of miles we've engineered between all the pieces of our food system. That's the thing forcing us down the industrial path. But And this is where the story gets really, really cool. What if the system is starting to fix itself? Not because of some big government plan or some grand design, but completely by accident.
Check this out. Remember when beef prices went through the roof after the pandemic? Well, food companies did something pretty clever. They started blending ground beef with vegetables. And people bought it because, hey, it was cheaper and it actually tastes pretty great. And just like that, without anyone making a big fuss about eating less meat, this simple change is starting to have a massive impact on overall meat demand.
And this wasn't just a random event. It was the end result of this incredible, unplanned chain reaction. You have to go back decades. First, dairy farms got way more efficient, so they needed fewer cows. That meant, fast forward to today, there are fewer old dairy cows available to become ground beef, so the supply got tighter. Then, post-COVID inflation hits, prices shoot up, and suddenly, there's the perfect opening for the blended burger to become a hit. It's a beautiful, accidental cascade.
So everything we've talked about, from that single pea enriching the soil all the way to the blended burger on a supermarket shelf, it's all pointing towards one single, really powerful idea that connects it all. It really starts with this simple thought: I only want to eat happy animals. Now, that might sound a little sentimental, a little fluffy, but it's not. It's actually a remarkably precise way to judge the health of a whole system. Think about it. A happy animal is one that lives in a system that works with nature, not against it. It has the right space, the right food, the right social life, so its well-being becomes a direct mirror of the farm's ecological health. And of course, the Danes have the absolute perfect word for this whole philosophy: Øko-logik. It is such a brilliant term. It's a play on words that mashes up ecology, economy, and logic. And it captures this core idea that what makes sense for the environment and what makes sense for the economy are, in the long run, the exact same thing. This idea, ecologic, it just completely reframes the entire debate. We're always told there's this trade-off, right? The sustainable option is the expensive option. But this framework says that's only because our accounting is totally broken. We ignore the massive hidden costs of the industrial system: the depleted soil, the polluted water, the loss of biodiversity. If we actually had to pay for those things, the ecological choice wouldn't just be the right choice, it would be the obvious economic one. And that leaves us right here with one final and pretty urgent question. The industrial model we have now is basically taking out a massive loan against our planet's future and calling it profit. Making this transition to a biological model, one built on Øko-logik, it's not just a nice to have, it's an absolute necessity. The only question left is, how fast does it have to happen? How much time do we really have before that ecological debt comes due?